Hello, welcome to Meaningful Careers, the hub of information, insights, and education for all things careers. Whether you are a student, an employee, a job seeker, an employer, or a business person, or you just want to further your career, this is the platform for you where I share useful information from my experience. I'm an experienced HR professional with over 10 years experience across Europe and Africa, and I've sat on many interview boards, interview panels, and I've interviewed candidates from entry level up to the senior level. So the information that I'm going to share with you in the next episode is from a panel member's perspective. So I want to share with you things about the tips, myths, and hints, and things that you didn't know that you could bring to an interview. So I hope you enjoy and learn as we walk through this together.
Meaningful careers now. Take the time to take your destiny in your hands now. With meaningful careers.
This is the bonus episode, but probably one of the most important ones in helping you. If you have been following, I'm sure by now you've realized and understood that an interview is not an interrogation. No, it's a conversation between professionals looking to exchange their services. All right. So there are many myths and many false beliefs that people have about interviews that I want to uncover today and expose and let you know that, look, this is not really true as you would have believed it. Okay? So let's start with the first one. One of the myths is that you cannot bring your notebook or you cannot bring notes to an interview, or you cannot take notes during an interview. Where was that written? Who said you cannot bring a notebook? Who said you cannot take notes? If this is a professional conversation or a professional meeting like any other meetings, then why can you not bring notes or your notebook? Look, it's one thing to have notes and another to articulate them well. This is not an exam, this is an interview, which is a conversation. So your notebook could be there for you to note down a few notes, a few questions, or even refer to some of the key points that you might have just listed just for your info. All right? So there is nothing stopping you from carrying your little notepad to take the notes. Obviously, don't over rely on saying, okay, I'm going with my notepad to read my notes in the interview. That will make you lose the point. It's all about taking notes, taking note of key things, and using it as a prompt for certain key points that you just don't want to miss out. All right? Because you're not going in an interview as somebody who has memorized their responses or memorized whatever they're going to say. No. Be as relaxed as possible so that you can articulate your points well. Then the other one is that you must answer immediately. Who said, when the question is asked, we are counting 1, 2, 3, then go? No, it's not a race. Take your time, process the information, relax, assimilate the information, gather your thoughts together, but don't take too long, obviously. But it's not a rule to say answer as soon as the interviewer finishes asking a question. Okay? Take note of that and let it help you. The other myth is that you cannot ask a question to be repeated. Obviously, this is untrue. You can always ask to say, please, can you clarify? Or, sorry, can you come again? Or, please, may you repeat the question? That kind of allows you to buy time to process your thoughts. This is only tricky or impossible in what we call strength-based interviews, where they are asking you your strength. So they don't want to, rather they want to see your initial natural response to a question, a scenario, or a statement to try and determine and establish if this is your strength or if it's a learned behavior. So in that case, that's where they may be like, okay, we are not going to repeat. But most times they let you know to say, we are not going to repeat this question, so please listen attentively. Then they call out the question. Okay? So there's nothing stopping you from asking them to repeat the question. And the other one is around salaries, that you must accept the first salary offer. No, that's not true. Tell you what, employers have salary scales for different roles, for different positions, and different grades, and different locations in some other countries. So they know what the salary range is. The minimum and the maximum, they already know it, right? So when you are offered a salary figure, usually they go for the minimum. Like in any negotiation, you don't start by hitting yourself too hard, isn't it? So you start with the low, then you go up, 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 and so forth. So don't shortchange yourself to try and just easily settle for that, because once you get in the organization, it's not going to be as easy as you might think to negotiate for a salary increase, because now you will be bound to the policy and the rules and the regulations of the organization as an employee. But the best moment that you have to negotiate and name your price is when you are being interviewed or when you are being recruited, when you haven't officially accepted the contract. So the choice is yours, but don't just go for any figure. It's not like you will lose the job if you say no. Then the other one is about the culture. There is nothing stopping you from asking about the culture. There is a belief that, oh, you don't have to ask about the culture, it's sensitive. No, it's not. You are showing that you're curious. You want to establish whether or not you can work together with these people, isn't it? So before you join, you want to clarify for yourself. Okay, you want to understand what is the attitude and the culture towards employee engagement, for example, in terms of learning and development, for example, in terms of just the work culture, promoting maybe your rights as a particular individual. If you're a woman, you're like, okay, what's the policy on equality? As an example, or if you come from any kind of protected characteristics, if you identify in any of those classes, you may be interested in just finding out what's the culture, what's the vibe like. There is nothing wrong with trying to establish what the culture is like, because you also want to join such an organization, but you want to know before you join. Okay, so nothing stops you from doing that. Let's talk about something different. I've talked about the myths and so forth, but I just want to get into another thing about reasonable adjustment. Now, this is not a myth, this is a reality. You have every right to request for reasonable adjustments, depending on your circumstances, depending on your background or your situation. You can ask for reasonable adjustments. Okay? Whether you are maybe neurodiverse and you struggle with learning or getting information in a different way, you may want to consider getting reasonable adjustments. For example, I've seen some say, I read better or I follow information better when it is typed or written down. So please write down the interview question for me. That's just their way of processing a piece of information. So it's still a reasonable adjustment that you can request. Or if you would need extra time because of any particular special needs that you might have, or you want to take breaks because of any issues that you might have during the course of an interview, because some interview may go for more than an hour, although we wouldn't encourage to have interviews too long, but sometimes they may go too long. You can, and you have the right to request a comfort break if you feel that this is too long in terms of time. Then alternative formats, if the format that they are presenting don't work well with how you read information, or if you have accessibility needs and so forth, you can request for reasonable adjustments. These are your rights, not favors. Any reasonable employer understands reasonable adjustments because they are there to make you thrive. In terms of some other tips, now let's talk about just some tips that you might find helpful as you prepare or as you want to look into any interview. All right, the first one is arriving early. Being on time helps settle everything down. You don't rush yourself, you're not under pressure. You gather your thoughts together, you've got all the time to, and you're sending the right message anyway, that you are a person who respects time, you are there on time, you're not rushing, you don't want the panel to wait for you. It's very important. Anyway, there is something it does to your psychology if you are there early and you are prepared. That's what it shows that you are really ready for this. And then testing your technology as well. If you are going to be doing a virtual interview online, etc., it's important to try out your equipment, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your tablet, whether you're using a mobile phone, although it wouldn't be the best to use maybe a mobile phone. But if that's the one you're going to use, then try to test it. An interesting thing that I once realized in one of the interviews was, the issue of lighting. Somebody was seated in front of the window such that the light was coming from behind them, behind their head. So in the end, on the screen, we couldn't see the face of the candidate. What we could just see was just a black shadow. Now you can imagine how disadvantaged that person was now, because you want to also see your non-verbal cues, your facial expressions, especially when you're talking about the strength questions and so forth. But we couldn't see anything. Right. So that's another element that just one needs to look out for, especially in this day and age where you're using maybe Teams, Zoom, or any other digital platform to attend an interview. Right. So test your technology, your IT kit before the interview so that you're not surprised on the day of the interview. Then using the STAR model to tell a story is very important. Remember, a STAR model is just there to guide your narration of events, especially when you're explaining a particular situation or an event or a moment. Right. It helps you do what we call storyboarding, take people through the journey. Right. So just remember to use that as much as possible and wherever possible. Remember, you're telling a story in the interview. This is communication between two parties. So you want to be able to articulate your story. At the end of the day, their ability to follow what you're saying is determined by how you deliver whatever you are delivering through your responses. So it's very important for you to be very clear and take them through your story, take them through your narration of events. Okay? Mirror the interviewer's tone. This is communication, and communication is good feedback, isn't it? It's two-way. It's not a broadcasting platform where one way is just sending. Even on the broadcasters now, they've got the back and forth. You get feedback from your listeners. So you want to have an environment where you are in sync with the tone of the interviewer. If the tone is also on a high note, try to be in that line. You don't want to give the negative or off energy when somebody is giving a different vibe. Try to connect, because that's one of the indicators that, oh, we can, work well together. We can relate, you're personable, and so forth. So read the room, read the emotions, read the tone, and follow suit. Then there are other questions where you might be asked to list certain things or to identify 3, 4, 5 things, right? The best way is to start by listing the things that have been asked for before you attempt to explain. You know why? Here is the thing. Say you have been asked to list 4 factors that you need to consider before launching a product, say internally. And you start by explaining the first factor. Say you wanted to use SWOT, for example, and you just start explaining maybe the strength. And you go on and on and on and on and on about the strength. So in the end, you've just spoken about one aspect. You have left out the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. So we now don't know whether or not you know what 4 factors we're being asked about, right? So it's easier and smarter to list the 4. In that way, you've already given them the answer. Now you're just explaining, and this can also help them even probe you further to be like, oh, you haven't explained maybe the fourth one. Maybe it's the threats that you'd have missed. You gave us this strength, weaknesses, and opportunities, but you haven't given us the threats. Can you articulate? So now they are reminding you and aiding you. So it's like you have banked your responses to them. Now you're just withdrawing at your pleasure, right? So it's another trick to look out for and try to use whenever you're asked to list. Then asking strong questions at the end. It's very important. It also shows that you're engaged. It shows that you are connected and keen. But the idea about asking your questions, don't really think that they will add much in terms of the scoring and so forth. Usually when they turn to you to say, do you have any questions, or is there anything that you want to ask? They have already kind of finished the scored elements of the interview questions. So it's now just an opportunity for you to give feedback, to ask any questions that you might have, right? So feel free, don't hesitate. But they also help you just give the right impression. And it's also an opportunity for you to add anything else that you might have missed, or that you thought this was a key point, but maybe they didn't ask you directly in such a way that you could bring it. You can use that moment to just find your way to bring it in the mix, isn't it? Yeah, so for me, as an example, the other time I was interviewed by a relatively new kind of panel, and they never did introduction. So they just jumped straight into the first question, second, third, fourth question. So you can imagine I had prepared 1 or 2 things that I thought, oh, okay, maybe in my introduction I'll set the scene, lay the foundation so that we are on the same page. But then I ended up using them even in my conclusion and any other questions, really. So you can be clever enough to try and find a way to fit in certain pieces of information that you think are key and helpful for the panel to know. Okay, so at the end of the day, interviewers, what are they interested in? They want clarity. Are you clear enough in your responses? Are you clear enough when you're talking about your experiences, when you're responding to the questions, when you're talking about your CV, your interest, your achievements, and so forth? Are you clear enough? Remember, clarity is what they want. Number two, they want confidence. Somebody who is confident is always the best person to talk to. You can imagine what lack of confidence can do to you. Do you know that lack of confidence can make you doubt even the obvious things that you know? That's where you find somebody saying, I think my name is, when you know for a fact that your name is. Okay, so that's the importance of confidence. That's what they are looking out for. Then self-awareness. Are you aware of yourself? Do you know who you are in terms of your shortcomings, your strength, your ambitions, where you're coming from, where you're going? Are you clear? Is the head screwed on? That's basically what they also want you. Then curiosity as well. How curious are you about the organization? And they are also curious to know you as well. So there is that curiosity on both sides. Hence they are probing, and you can also ask and follow up and probe in terms of some of their questions as well. And then lastly, the evidence that you are bringing. That's one thing that the interviewers are interested in. If you say you can do this, or if you said you could do this on your CV, now is the chance for you to tell us and show us that you can do it. Now, depending on the type of the interview. So that's it in terms of the tips. Now let's finish this in the strongest and possible way by looking at some of the tricky questions. And that's in the next episode. So see you soon.
Meaningful carriers now. Take the time to take your destiny in your hands now. With meaningful carriers.